America's New Year resolution. Let's save America. How about that? How about we all band together? Not the Democrats, not the leftists, right? Because they're the ones that we're trying to save America from. But the rest of the same people out there. How about we all unite and make 2024 the year that we boot all the communists and socialists from, say, public places of public service? Socialists should not be serving openly in politics. They should not be politicians. How can they take an oath of office based on a constitution, the Constitution of the United States, when they're socialists? The two cannot coexist. And before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That is the faith-based news arm of Pastor Jack Hibbs's church out in California. And you know what? If you're not watching Pastor Jack Hibbs on YouTube or on his website for his sermons that he delivers every Sunday and Wednesday and at other points and parts during the week, you're really missing out. You're missing out on a great pastor who delivers the biblical truth as it pertains to modern American society. Because too many people out there go, what does church, what does the Bible, what does God have to do with my work? What does God have to do with what I do during the work week or when I'm out with my friends? How does the Bible pertain to modern day society? Well, he clarifies that. He makes it clear, which is what I meant when I said he clarifies. And he gives you pointers in how to live biblical truths in a very secular, growing, wicked society. Pastor Jack Hibbs. It's Hibbs. And I want to give you a quick heads up. Here's something that nobody really knows except my publisher. My next book, my next nonfiction book coming out it's scheduled for September 2024. Pastor Jack Hibbs will be writing the foreword for it. So you're going to want to learn a little bit about his sermon and about him and his family and about the fights he makes on behalf of America before you go pick up a copy of my book and see his name listed on the cover as the writer of the foreword. But let's get back to where else you can get Bold and Blunt. Don't want to forget Washington Times, WashingtonTimes.com, my employer and the greatest newspaper in America. Just go to WashingtonTimes.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter section, click on it, and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. That's yours truly. That's me. Moi. Right? Click on that, enter your email address, and you will be signed up to receive my Monday, Wednesday, and Friday newsletter, which doesn't just contain my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcast, but you'll also get the commentaries that I write all day long, all week long, except Christmas week and New Year's week because I'm going on vacation. But usually all day long at the Washington Times. And it'll help you fight the far left communists that we all just swore as a resolution for 2024 to boot from this country, right? So get educated, get armed, put on your spiritual armor, right? Helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, belt of truth, shoes of the peace of the gospel, sword of the Spirit, and shield of faith, right? And go forth with my commentaries, and let's take back America from the communists. One more quick mention, you may also get Bold and Blunt. Whew, that was a long intro, wherever podcasts are offered. So let's get to the show, because I have a great guest, and I'm not going to take long before I introduce him, because you want to hear him way more than you want to hear me. But when you look out at America right now, I don't know how old you are. I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. And I remember growing up in freedom, right? I remember growing up riding my bicycle without those silly little helmets and knee pads and whatever else they want to stick on little kids nowadays, just to ride a tricycle with 18 training wheels attached to it down the driveway, but not out in the street because it's scary out there. It's too scary. Stay in the driveway. And I remember a time when, in station wagons, the kids just rode in the back with their sleeping bags and rolled it all around, right? And people didn't die. Nobody died daily from not wearing a seatbelt and a car seat until the age of 16. Do you know let me just sidestep really quickly. Do you know in my state of Virginia that some time ago, some years ago, they passed a new law saying car seats had to be worn. They had a weight class for it. I think it's like 50 pounds or 60 pounds. And at the time, my kids were, I think I had a 10-year-old that still, by Virginia law, should have been in a car seat still. I mean, come on. Can we let kids grow up a little bit with a realization that, hey, life has no guarantees and, hey, life can be dangerous. And guess what? Sometimes life is scary too. And why we need to instill that in our youth is because freedom itself is frightening, right? If you want this sort of government guarantee that all will be great in your life and government is there to help you and provide for you. It's a lie, of course, but if you want to be told that lie and live with that lie, there are plenty of countries in the world where you can go, where there's a dictator and there's a military that listens to the dictator, and anytime there's something scary that happens, like a criminal, right? The surveillance society that's in place then alerts the dictator's minions and military to swarm that area and grab that criminal and carry away that scary, scary man or woman to a prison never to again be seen. So if you want a society like that, where things seem, at least on surface, to be safer, and there's no guns because there's no Second Amendment, and so citizens don't have guns, and the school systems don't let kids carry anything to school with a sharp edge, and they don't offer anything in school to cut meat or pick up meat. They give them these little spoons and they scoop up their food because it's a lot safer that way, right? Those knives and those plastic knives, you can stab somebody, and practically with a plastic knife, you can almost, if you press hard enough and the victim is willing to sit still long enough, you can almost break skin. And that's bad, and parents don't like that. So we have societies in the world where it's all about government providing safety and security and pretending like they're watching out for the citizens. And if that's the type of system you want to live in, have at it. Borders in America swing both ways. Under Joe Biden, they certainly do. Under Democrats in the White House, they always swing both ways. But you can leave. You can leave and go somewhere else. So teaching kids that life is harsh and filled and fraught with frightening events and safety concerns and security issues actually teaches them to value freedom, because freedom in itself is fearful. If you're free, for instance, to choose for yourself whether or not, say, to wear a seatbelt when you drive in your car, or a helmet when you ride your motorcycle, or nowadays your tricycle. If you're free to choose that, then you are also taking on an acknowledgement and awareness of the consequences that could result from that, and sort of silently agreeing to accept those consequences. So if you ride your motorcycle without a helmet and somebody hits you and you get squashed and your head explodes, Merry Christmas, right? What a vision. But I'm just being honest here. If that happens and you didn't have a helmet on, that's the consequence for your action. Now, if you have a helmet on and it happens to save you from having your head squashed, then good. That's the consequence of your action as well. But the idea of a free society is that government steps back and allows the individual to make that decision, right? It's not up to government to make sure everybody wears this and dresses properly for that and puts on this helmet for this and this safety gear for that and, brushes your teeth 3 times a day or at least twice a day and uses mouthwash and flosses. I mean, the list can get endless. Once you open the door for government to take care of you and cede some of your individual choice, meaning individual freedom, to government to dictate, then the door is cracked and government is always willing to enter and take more and more individual liberties and individual freedoms, individual powers. Just look at how fast we lost everything under the coronavirus. So my point here, before I bring in my guest, my point here is teach your kids, if we want a society that is free, if we want to boot the communists and socialists from government in 2024, because they have no right in serving in American government. They have no right in receiving a taxpayer-funded salary for their unconstitutional service. If we want to do that, we have to start teaching our kids that freedom can be very frightening, but that's the trade-off. What was that quote from one of the founding fathers? And I think it's one of those quotes, and when you actually research it, you come to find out the founding father didn't actually make that statement, but it's still an important statement. It still carries a crucial theme. It's still applicable that those who would trade security for liberty deserve neither. That's what's taking place in America right now. We've come to a point where the safety and security of everybody. If we can save one child, let's do this. If it can keep one child from being harmed, let's shut down an entire nation and chalk it up to a virus, a health issue. We've come to a point in our nation where that's become the accepted way of governing. That's become the accepted norm in society. And guess what? It's not American. Right? It's not American at all. So let's pledge 2024, no more communists, no more Marxists, no more socialists, which means quit voting for Democrats. No more Democrats. And let's save America from these loons, because I have 4 kids. Yes, and I want my 4 kids to grow up in a free society. And I know that there are some other people out there with kids who want their kids to grow up in a free society too. And so we all have to band together and boot the commie SOBs. Can I say that? Yeah, because SOBs, right? You don't know what I mean by that. It's an acronym. It could mean anything. Anyhow, let's all resolve 2024, time of the free. That's the year that America turns back to God, puts God back at the helm of American society, and puts government back in its rightful role of humble service to the people, which means, again, not to repeat, but don't vote Democrat. And my guest today, Alan West, he has quite a bit to say about the state of America, beginning with, can we please get back Donald Trump in office? Or, at the very least, can we please get rid of all the Democrats? Alan West, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Well, Cheryl, it's a pleasure to be back with you, and a Merry Christmas to you and everyone out there listening.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you as well. I wanted to talk with you because of your 20-plus years in the Army, military experience. You retired Lieutenant Colonel. I wanted to talk with you about Israel, Hamas, what's going on there. And just put it to you bluntly, do you think that this would have happened under the previous Donald Trump administration?
No, absolutely not. It wouldn't have happened under the previous Donald Trump administration, and we have proof as to why it would not have happened. When President Trump, he was the first American president to say that we will actually move that embassy, the U.S. embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, where it rightfully should be. You heard all of these Islamic jihadist groups, throwing a fit. You heard Mahmoud Abbas and the Fatah, which is the Palestinian Authority, talking about the threats, blood in the streets and everything, and nothing happened. As a matter of fact, the whole movement went without a hitch, and it was opened up in a great ceremony that happened there in Jerusalem. So, no, Islamic terrorists and jihadists would not have done anything. And the other reason why they wouldn't have done anything, because he had bankrupted Iran. basically Hezbollah and Hamas were out having bake sales and lemonade stands to try to raise money. But when the Biden administration comes in and they renew the Iranian nuclear agreement, they send $6 billion to Iran. They ease up on the sanctions implementation so that now Iran is flush with oil revenues once again. It's the policies of the Biden administration that embolden and encourage Hamas by way of Iran to do exactly what we saw them do on October the 7th.
It's interesting that you pointed out some of Donald Trump's pro-Israel endeavors, because I don't know if you heard, but over the weekend, Congressman Jamie Raskin, he's a Democrat from Maryland, talked about how anti-Semitism is coursing through the Republican Party, and he named Donald Trump as an anti-Semite. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, the Democrats are the party of projection. Anything that they say someone else is doing, they're trying to project that onto them because that's who they are. When you look at all these college and university campuses, when you look at the people that are out there embracing Hamas, it's Jamie Raskin and his colleagues, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, and all of them that are right there in his caucus in the Democrat House of Representatives. That's where he should turn to look for anti-Semitism, not to Donald Trump. And it's just the same old shape-shifting game that the Democrats always try. And all you can do is just laugh at a guy like Raskin.
Yeah, it's so astonishing how they can get away with that because of their friends in the media, I believe. The United Nations has been pressing for Israel to have a ceasefire against Hamas right now. Are you happy with how Joe Biden has been handling relations with Israel right now?
Not really, because there's something that goes on in the public eye, but we all know what's happening in private. There's more pressure being put on to Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel to pull back off, give up, humanitarian aid, things of this nature. But I think that Joe Biden is trying to straddle a fence, and that is causing him a lot of pain because his anti-Semitic far-left backers and supporters of the Democrat Party, they're the ones that want to see a ceasefire. They're the ones that want to see Hamas remain intact, and he is not giving them what they want. And then, of course, those of us that have common sense realize that this whole thing got started, as I just articulated, because of Biden's policies and his weakness toward Iran. So he's in a tough pickle. He's in a bad situation, and that's why no one is giving him any credit whatsoever as far as his handling of this issue with Israel and Hamas.
I really think it just emboldens the terrorists when they see that maybe Joe Biden puts out one statement or takes a vote and so forth in favor of Israel, but on the other hand, his cabinet, his administration waters down any type of pro-Israel diplomacy.
Yes, it is absolutely emboldening terrorists. It's not just the terrorists that it is emboldening, and this goes back to the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's emboldening Iran, it's emboldening Russia, it's emboldening China, and even North Korea. It's emboldening, Nicolas Maduro down in Venezuela. All of the entities that are looking to stand up against the United States of America and be a threat against our allies and our regional interests, they're the ones being emboldened by his lack of energy and effort and lack of strategic focus and operational implementation. The fact that we have had, I think we're over 100 different attacks on our men and women in the Middle East, there has really not been any response. Sure, they can come back and say they dropped some bombs on some empty warehouses, but that doesn't mean anything to Iran, the Houthi rebels, Hezbollah, Hamas, or whomever that is out there attacking our men and women.
So draw on your military experience right now and your leadership roles that you held in the military. What is the smart move America should be making right now to calm tensions, if possible, in the Middle East?
Well, you can't really calm tensions. You got to call a ball, and strike a strike. And there should not be any Islamic terrorist organization that exists with their charter that is based upon the annihilation, the extermination, the eradication of an entire nation state, and that's Israel. So Hamas is a terrorist organization, but you can go all the way back to 1983, October of 1983, and we had the Beirut barracks bombing. and that killed some 254 Marine soldiers and sailors, and that was Hezbollah. So I think, without a doubt, we need to get ourselves energy independent, energy dominant once again. We need to be producing, consuming, and exporting. And we need to make sure that these sanctions against these nations like Venezuela, like Iran, and others, that those sanctions are hard and they're implemented to bring them back down to their knees. And we need to take strong offensive action against these terrorist organizations.
And this administration, like all Democrats, just shy away from taking any sort of offensive action, and usually defensive action too. If you're looking ahead in the last year of Joe Biden's presidency, where do you see the conflict right now, Israel, Hamas leading? Do you see it expanding? Iran, Russia, China? What do you see taking place?
Sadly, I think that in this last year, you're going to see the enemies of the United States of America trying to make all their advancements, because just in case the United States of America pulls its head out of this you-know-what and gets the Biden administration gone and does not replace it with a Gavin Newsom or whoever, if the United States of America corrects itself in the Oval Office, they want to put America in such an untenable position that we won't be able to strike back at them. So I think that you're going to see even more attacks, and I'm very concerned about what is happening with our open border and the amount of, gotaways and single military-age males that have come across that border. It just leads you to believe, as Christopher Wray said, that we have a heightened threat of a terrorist attack again here in our homeland.
I agree with what your assessment about what's going to take place in the last year of Joe Biden's administration. And I wonder how concerned you are about the wokeness in the military, and specifically because you must have sources still in the military. What are you hearing toward that end? Is it getting better, worse? What can you...
No, it's absolutely worse. And you're a former soldier as well. And soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, they want to get out there and they want to train on their primary duties and tasks, and that's not what they're being told to do. The focus of the military is on murdering unborn babies in the womb. It's on gender dysphoria. It's on this cultural Marxism and all this DEI and things that divide our force. And when you look at the fact that we are not meeting our recruitment levels, we're not meeting our retention levels, that's the reason why. There was a recent video out there of a young specialist who was separated from the Army out of Fort Bragg, airborne soldier, and he was going to be charged $4,000 for the money, for the equipment that he was told to leave in Afghanistan. So why would anyone want to be a part of that military? But what is even more insulting is when you have a person like Dick Durbin, who stands up in the floor of the Senate saying because of the lack of recruiting and the retention that we have in our military, we should allow illegal immigrants to be a part of our military.
Yes.
Now, how stupid is that you would want people to be in your military to take an oath to support and defend the Constitution, which their very existence in America is because they didn't abide by our Constitution. They broke our rule of law. So this is how absolutely bizarro world things have become in the Biden administration.
Let me ask you about that, Durbin's remarks and similar type of endeavors from Democrats to give driver's license to illegals and so forth and give them all kinds of entitlements. Do you really think it's stupidity, or do you think it's an actual strategy to crumble America from within?
I think it's a purposeful and intentional strategy. I mean, you're talking about 8 to 9 million. The left wants them to vote. You want to talk about undermining democracy. You want illegal immigrants to vote in our elections. You want them to have a driver's license, which means they're going to get the opportunity to vote. Governor Pritzker out in Illinois said that he wanted to hire them as law enforcement officers, and now you got Dick Durbin saying that you want them to be in our military. This is purposeful and intentional by the progressive socialist left. This is part of that fundamental transformation of the United States of America. And, the numbers could reach 10 million by the time Joe Biden leaves office, of the amount of illegal immigrants. And again, a preponderance of which single military-age males and also people that we don't know who they are or where they are have come illegally into the United States of America. And, oh, by the way, talking about threats to our security, just look at the recent report that was out in Breitbart where they have created a new line for airline travel for those people that are illegal immigrants, where they don't have to show any type of ID. They can just go right through and get on our airplanes. But yeah, you and I, Cheryl, legal law-abiding citizens or, legal immigrants here in the United States of America, we have to show some type of picture ID.
Let me ask you, how do you turn back from that? How do we as a nation, recoup our sovereignty and turn back from this insurgence at the border?
Well, I think this is going to be a preeminent issue in the 2024 election because it is having such an incredible effect, second, third, and fourth order effect, the trafficking of drugs, the fentanyl, the human trafficking, sex trafficking, and the breakdown of security locally and domestically for people. So I think, number one, you've got to go back to the policies that were in place, the Remain in Mexico policy. This is not so much about more money to the border. It's about the policy shift that needs to happen because what the Biden administration has done is they have dismissed the Constitution, their constitutional duty and responsibility. And I think that's the real impeachable offense that should be brought up against Joe Biden more than Hunter Biden and all this other, shenanigans of the Biden crime family. It should be what he has done to undermine our sovereignty. So I think we just got to go back to honoring our Constitution, doing what people are supposed to do, and supporting, defending the Constitution and protecting the American people and our sovereignty. And I believe, again, this is going to be a critical issue because everybody sees this, everyone feels this.
And then you look at the emerging generation of leaders and voters in America, such as what's taking place on college campuses right now with the anti-Semitism, not just in the students, but in the administrative body as well. Can you speak to that? Because I got to say, I'm not surprised by a whole lot that takes place, but the level of anti-Semitism on America's campuses, that's surprising to me.
Well, I don't think it's so surprising. I mean, we've always known it was there, but this event with Hamas has really kicked it into a new level. And so our college and university campuses, as we all saw with those university professors who were testifying before the House last week, it has become the incubator of radical Marxism, the incubator of little dictators, definitely the incubators of socialism, and now, like you say, this anti-Semitism. And it's all because they are not educating kids in college and university campuses, and they're trying to get it down to high school and even middle school level. But it's more so about the indoctrination to far-left, progressive, socialist, leftist, Marxist policies. And when you look at the administrations, when you look at the instructors, the professors that are on these campuses, they embrace that, and that's what they're teaching. That's what they're putting out through the schools of education, these next generation leftist teachers. That's what they're putting out through the schools of journalism. And you know this very well, being in the media, the next generation of leftist media writers. So we've got to turn something around. I think the most important thing is donors cutting off their contributions, and if there is American taxpayer funding going to these anti-Semitic bastions, it should be cut off.
Last question, because I know we've got to go, but if you're an American concerned about the fate of America and you're looking around and you just see battles everywhere you look, what one or two type issues do you think are immediately winnable that we should put our efforts in the next year or so?
I would say you put it on the umbrella of security. We have got to restore the individual economic security and empowerment of the American citizen. We have got to restore our energy security. That means getting back to being energy independent and energy dominant. Our national security and foreign policy is part of that. Our border security is part of that, and our domestic security. When you see all of these leftist DAs and others who are releasing violent criminals back on our streets, and then you put on top of that all of these illegals and single military age males that we have allowed to the country, that is also a threat against our domestic security. And then the last thing I think part of that is educational freedom, which also means, security for parents to make the choice of how best to educate their child. So if we can wrap everything around under the umbrella of security, I think we've got a great platform going forward.
Excellent ideas. Thank you for that. Alan West, great American patriot. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. Merry Christmas once again.
Merry Christmas. Thank you so much, Cheryl, and all the best to you.
Alan West, always dead on point. I want to thank you for listening. Remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. And you can get Bold and Blunt at Real Life Network and wherever podcasts are offered. Tune in next time. Merry Christmas. Happy holiday season. Happy New Year. And let's make 2024 the year of Bold and Blunt. God bless.